show you some of the behind the scenes photos from the time when I made the illustrations for the children's picture books. So in an earlier video I explained how I wrote 9, actually there are a few more, but 9 children's stories that I finished. And the stories were picture books, the type of books for younger children where there's pictures and text. And before I knew whether I would get these books published, I wanted to present them to my agent with pictures to go with the text, and I decided I couldn't any longer try and draw realistic pictures from photographs taken of children and animals, because it was just too difficult getting models, and I wasn't enjoying drawing realistic pictures very much anyway. So when I decided to use the little people I'd already made for the pictures for the children's stories, I realised I would have to make some considerable sets or landscape and houses and homes. And while I could make some of the homes, I had to have some of the houses made by a very helpful and skilled dolls house maker, and I'll link him below this video. And he didn't cost very much either. In any case, making the landscape and sets for these picture books was utterly consuming. It took about, I'm not sure if it was 6 or 9 months. In the end, I was only able to take one photograph a day, one usable photograph of one set or one scene, which shows just how much work went into arranging each illustration. I wouldn't say it was good fun. At times it became so chaotic and so involved, because when you're dealing with such tiny things, although you have absolute control over them as you wouldn't over, say, real people or a film set, even if you were a director, because there's so many things you can't really control. And when you're working with a tiny world that you're making from scratch, you'd think you'd be able to control every part of it, but of course it's not like that at all. And I was learning lots of things as I went along: how to light things, for instance, how to photograph things, how to make cobblestone pathways, how to dry stone wall. Actually, it wasn't dry stone wall, it was miniature stone walling with polyfiller, how to make a tree from chicken wire, and there were times when it just all got a bit too much. There were other times when it was incredibly satisfying. So I'm going to show you all the little things that went on behind the illustrations today, and all the chaos, all the scrapes, and I'm going to show you by means of some pictures on my website, so hopefully you'll be able to see all right in the camera. Now I'm going to take it down from this very strange angle. I still haven't worked out how to get me and other things in a photograph, in a video, in this iPhone, unless the iPhone is very far away or very high up. Anyway, I'm going to now put video just the computer screen. Okay. I wonder if anyone knows how to prevent this kind of weird neon grid appearing on the phone video face screen when I video another screen. I've tried kind of lightening and darkening my computer screen. I've tried putting the phone at different distances, and I don't know whether it's just in an insufficiently developed camera in my iPhone that's making this weird grid, or not. And anyway, any case, I can't really, oh gosh, it's worse now, see a way around it just now. So on my website I'm going to this little house down here which is called Sets. It used to be called Behind the Scenes, and it's still called Behind the Scenes, and it has a roll of sellotape, a peg, and a small red oil lamp by the title. The sellotape because I used industrial quantities of the stuff, but while filming photographing the illustrations for the children's books. I use sellotape for everything from holding lamps in place, cardboard, pieces of scenery, trees. Pegs also came in very, very useful. This little red oil lamp because I just like it. Now, this first image is supposed to be a hill or a hillock. I mean, it could really extend further up here, and and it should just be a kind of bigger hill. But I didn't have any more fake grass that I could bend around the chicken wire and polyfiller armature. As with all the organically shaped houses and homes, I made the structure with chicken wire, and then I fixed the chicken wire to a very strong piece of wood as a base, and then I packed wet polyfiller into the chicken wire, which was very difficult because you're packing wet, sort of sloppy white clay into a wire mesh, so it essentially goes in one side and out the other side, so you have to use buckets and buckets of the stuff. In any case, this is meant to be a burrow house, and this does not appear in any of the children's stories, but I hope to use it one day. This is called the burrow, and this is the inside of the burrow. This is a fake tunnel. You're not really meant to see the end of it. And it has one room. The burrow is not a very big home. And it's not even a 1/12 scale home actually. The furniture in here is a little bit smaller than 1/12. I'd probably say 1/16. I think I said 1/16 the other day to describe the size of the larger models I made. I realise now that's quite wrong. I was going the wrong way on the scale. I should have said something like 1/8 or something. So this is the back of the burrow. You can see the tree house I made in the background there. There's the fake tunnel again. These tiles were a wonderful find. I only found one sheet of them though in Kristin Baybar's. It's such an old doll's house shop that she has lots of singular things, like one-off things. And so I just had enough to tile this room. It was jolly difficult getting the fake grass to stay around this plaster and polyfiller burrow. I can't remember how I glued it in the end, maybe with no nails glue, but nothing really stuck it at all. This same line of washing appeared in The Old Lady in the Shoe, in that illustration for the story, for the first Little Pixie story, Where's My Story. There are also beams in the burrow, real pieces of wood that I cut unstained and sort of pressed up into the damp polyfiller while the ceiling was still setting. And then there are some little steps leading up to a wooden door I made, the front door, and a small window with perspex for glass. So here's a bit of a slightly closer up. Bucket, stick, stove, a lamp mimicking sunlight. Just normal lamplight looks a lot like sunlight and creates some lovely shadows in 1/12 scale. This is supposed to be another passageway leading off here, probably to a bedroom or something in the corner. And there's a different light showing up the brilliant terracotta floor tiles and the cracks, the grains in the wood and the ceiling. Yeah, I had this for a long time as my screensaver on my laptop because I just wanted to live in this little burrow. There's a little blanket chest there, a little clock, dresser. Yeah, a very tiny person could live here. I thought perhaps the little old woman, sorry, who looks suitably poor. And this is the model I imagined living in the burrow. She's called the Little Old Woman, and she's very small. She's one of the smallest adult models. Now the next home we have is supposed to be a grass ball for a little animal or a fairy, and the person I chose to live here was Mother Cherry, that kind of elf-like woman. I'm trying to shrink it down, but I can't. That's as small as it will go. With the dirndl and the kind of smocking and the red and pink check skirt, flared skirt, and little black slippers. Again, this is a chicken wire armature with polyfiller mashed into it and then smoothed out on the inside, and I can't remember how I fixed the wooden floors to the chicken wire, but I did. This is a little store down here meant to be like a kind of pantry with sacks of grain, oats, seeds, and baskets and boxes of vegetables for the winter. Then there's a little, living room with a shelf of books, baskets, onions, stove, dresser, table set with afternoon tea, sewing basket, and little free-floating steps going up to a hole in the ceiling where upstairs there's a four-poster bed, not very successfully made, I must say, the curtains at least, and the canopy. And I forgot to put the lattice work perspex in the window, which I kicked myself for later because I couldn't really Photoshop it in for some reason. It was too difficult. But this patchwork quilt was wonderful. It was brilliant, and actually took, I don't know, days and days in itself. I took scraps from all of the clothes with which I'd dressed the little people and cut them into squares of the same size and simply glued them to a piece of fabric. So it's quite stiff, but it looks so pretty. You can see it a little bit better there. And there's just enough room for a small person to move around. I think that's an armchair, wash bowl and jug, some shelves with for blankets. Then you can see downstairs a little bit more. There's a window here and a window there. Another shelf up here. This little lamp really works. There's a wire, electrifying it. And there's the afternoon tea. Food made by me, crockery and china bought from various dolls' house shops. And now we come, and this little grass house wasn't used in the story either, which was a shame, and I hope to use it in as an illustration in some sort of story at some point. Oh, and I should say the inspiration for this was a Bramley Hedge picture. I absolutely loved the Bramley Hedge books when I was little, and I think this was in Autumn Story, unless I'm mistaken. This is Mother Cherry. This is the model I imagined living in the grass house. Her prettiness and daintiness seem to suit it, I think. Yep. So now we come on to a home that actually did star in one of the children's picture books, and it was the first picture book in which the little people starred, or it was the story that gave me the idea for using the little people. Oh no, sorry, tell a lie, it's Little Pixie's Rainy Day. So the first book with Little Pixie, scrap all of that. Basically, this is Little Pixie's house. He lives in a tree. The tree was made by plastering polyfiller around a chicken wire armature, and handmade wooden window frames, floorboards, beams, door, shelf and stairs were pressed into the polyfiller while it was still wet. This is simply a piece of board with that kind of green, dusty, powdery grass that you can shake onto things and it sets on glue when the glue is wet. And then the little bits of, I think, is it called sea moss? And then a little real branch of a tree simulating another tree, and a fallen log on the forest floor. This is a supposedly sunny day, and this is achieved by lighting the hole with lamplight. And then this here is a rainier day or rainy light, and I think I just let natural light come in through my bedroom window to take that photograph. And you could, and on real rainy days, rainy light, oh sorry about that, okay, lent it a very realistic kind of stormy feel. You can see there, there's a pliers holding this tree up. There's lattice work windows, and when I say lattice work, I mean perspex with permanent marker drawn on it. Milk bottle, mirror sheet puddles I cut out, not photoshopped around the edges. And there's a picture of little Pixie with his milk bottle coming out and testing the air. And you can see kind of the scale of the tree there, because little Pixie is about 3 or 4 inches high. And here's the tree again. That's the 1930s red brick house. And these are the pieces of cardboard I used for the illusion of sky. And you can see that at the top, the tree just ends, so I'm careful never to take a photo of the top of it in the illustrations. There's Pixie's bedroom window, that's his kitchen window. And it's sitting on a chest of drawers. The tree was supposed to be at the top of a hill, but the hill couldn't be made because I simply didn't have enough space to make it. And then this is the tree from the back. Oh, there are my heads, my full-size sculpted heads. And you can see that it's just one room on top of the other, and quite thick polyfiller walls. So there's the hall, there's the sitting room, there's the kitchen, there's the bedroom. This is in the midst of telling the story where they've all, well, actually towards the end of the story, where they've all piled into the kitchen, and these mirror sheets are supposed to mimic the water, the flood waters. This is little Pixie's bedroom, and you get an idea of just how heavy this house is because of the thickness of the polyfiller walls. Then little Pixie's kitchen. Little Pixie's living room. This door leads nowhere, it's just a sort of fake door. And his hallway. Here are the puddles again. Late in the story we have a Pixie sailing past Pixie's kitchen window with a fox in a boat when the whole countryside is flooded. And in order to get the photo I had to hold it up. Hold the whole lot up on top of the two puddles I'd been using all the way through, and then Photoshop the rest of the water to make it look seamless and continuous. There's an aerial shot of, the Wanderer asking to come in out of the rain. I like this picture. Of course, not all of the pictures made it into the picture book. Only I had to choose, but some of them I really liked. I could have done with a tripod in retrospect because they could all be a little bit crisper, a little bit blurred. I like the warm light coming out, streaming out from inside the hallway, and I like the way the ground really does look slightly submerged in water. It's just the mirror puddles again, spritzed with a plant spray. There's the goat going past the kitchen window on a door, wooden door, and all of it on top of the mirror puddles, held aloft by me again as I photographed it. There's Mr. Hawthorne asking to come in. There's a close-up of the traveller. and you really get a feeling of a rainy day in this one. The light is just right. Now these were some of my attempts to avoid having to really flood the tree house. Unsuccessful. This was placing a plastic bag at a certain point in the room. I hoped you'd be able to see the furniture through the plastic bag and that it would mimic water, but of course you couldn't see the furniture through it, and what was more, if water really was this high in the room, then the furniture would be floating. Then I tried some other, a kind of fainter plastic here, but it still didn't really look right. This is the mock-up book of Little Pixie's Rainy Day, which I talk about in a separate video. And Little Pixie is around somewhere. Yeah, here he is. He now has different hands and a different top and fleece jerkin to the Little Pixie in the picture book, because he got so damaged and dirty. And here is the Wanderer. You can see he's reasonably tall. And this was the only time he featured in one of the children's stories. He's such a good character, I had to put him in one of them. So as you can see here, Little Pixie got quite a bit worse for wear after posing for hundreds, perhaps thousands of photographs throughout this whole story, and he had to effectively be remade by the time he starred in his next story. He's got glue caked on his hands, his jacket and clothes got so dirty, his legs got broken. I had to sand his face and repaint it, give him another ear. So the first story he starred in was called Where's My Story, which I talk about in another video. That's the cover of the little book, of the mock-up book. And in this first book, Little Pixie goes to seek his story. There were no sets to build in this storybook except the shoe the old woman lives in, which is here. This is the little old woman that I built the burrow for as well. A few hills and a room in the Emperor's court. I think I have the Emperor somewhere around. Yeah, there's the Emperor, who became the Emperor that thought he was wearing new clothes when in fact he was Starkers. And also a stage I made that featured in the end pages of the book for no real reason at all. I was playing around with some meta kind of ideas about paper and books and pages and speech bubbles and what was real, and so I think at some point I'd made a stage and used it for the end pages in the end. There's also a white stone cottage in Where's My Story, which is the cottage in the scrapwork field. That's Sylvie's cottage. In Where's My Story, it's the Three Bears cottage, and the Tudor house, the front of which I took off and balanced against the end to make it look like another building, also formed a backdrop to the Doctor and Foster and Wee Willie Winky scenes in Where's My Story. This is one of the hills I made, and this is the set with a lamp and a big swathe of paper, and it was on this table in front of this screen. This is an old screen in my parents' kitchen. I photographed the whole of Where's My Story. There's the Three Bears cottage, which is also Sylvie's cottage, and the Tudor buildings. Trying to get the image of the Emperor to just fill the mirror. so that I could stand him closer to the mirror in the final shot and show him inside its frame. Here I am trying to get the Emperor fully clothed to appear in the mirror so that later I can just Photoshop this part of the image into the mirror frame and photograph the Emperor with a different body, a nude body, and the crowd of courtiers and people. Like that. And there, excuse me. And here's the stage which forms part of the end papers of the book. I was experimenting with lighting it in different ways, and the cast of characters. All these little wires attached to doll's house lamps and plugged into this tiny board here. That's a bit of a ghoulish, lurid light, and then there's a kind of more neutral light I think I went for at the end. This is very theatrical, but the resolution wasn't high enough. And then there's Puss in Boots peering out of the curtains. Fame-hungry Puss in Boots. The next picture book that I'm going to show you behind the scenes of is Little Old Lady Pie. And I don't actually have any of the models from this little book in London with me. There are only two characters in the story anyway, Clara and the bear. But this is the little house. Actually, even though it is a small house, you can see that in 1/12 scale things are reasonably big because there's a bed. There's my bed in the background. The bedroom was quite large, thank goodness. But this took up a good half of it. And this is fake grass, chippings, real soil, a collection of fake and real trees. And these fences were pretty much just balanced, if I remember. So it took hours and hours just to balance all of this. And the tiny little wire hoops along the path. Oh, there's my bed in the background. And you see the inside of the house. You can see Clara's kitchen and her bedroom and the landing. You can also see the pliers, which I used to hold lots of trees up. The patchwork quilt from the grass house I re-enlisted. And this is Clara's bedroom, which also became the beggar's boy's bedroom at the end of Mr. Trushenko, the toy maker. That's the beggar boy's bedroom, and that's Clara's bedroom. And then that's downstairs. And I think I mentioned in a video before it was difficult trying to get firelight to come from the place it would be coming from if there was a fire here in the grate. So I had to light it from this side and just hope that it kind of looked like firelight. And then we've got the bear's cave. I'm not sure if, yes, there is a double spread in the picture book of the bear's cave, I think. And this was made with exactly the same method as Little Pixie's treehouse and the burrow and the grass ball, with a chicken wire armature covered with polyfiller on a board. There's the bear's pantry and the bear before I photoshopped an expression on his face. And that's the bear's cave as Clara imagines it to be when she, at the beginning of the story, is afraid of bears and thinks that the bear that lives in the woods catches old ladies in a net. I don't know if you can make out in the background. That's supposed to be little old ladies in a net. Well, it is it's all my little old lady models in a net. And that's a heap of their shopping trolleys and hats and umbrellas and baskets. And then it's quite graphic, I guess, in a way, then makes pies from them. That's the image that appears on the front of the book of their legs sticking up out of a pie. This was making the cauldron here from a Marmite jar, packed around with some more modelling clay. And these are the bears themselves. Excuse me. Before they were covered with fur. This is my attempt to cover them with fur. But I realised it was a job for a professional, and so I sent them to someone who covered them with fur. They were very heavy because they're so big, and the Fimo is quite dense. Oh, I've said here I had to send them to America to have the fur laid on. I forgot about that. So now we go behind the scenes of The Night the Moon Went Out, which is the shortest story of them all. There's the mock-up book. So this is the house from The Night the Moon Went Out. This is the mock-up picture book I made for the story. It's 60 words long, more or less. And this is Joe, the little boy in the story. Though, as a model, he was called Ben when I made him originally. This is the house Joe, or Ben, lives in. And this is the room which I was able to use to make the set. This is the garden around the house, and this is a hill which Joe and Grandad climbed to see an eclipse of the moon one night. The hill is made up of, as you can see, a rug, the bear cave, which was already featured in another story, a waste paper basket, a flower pot, even a walker. And it still wasn't high enough, but we couldn't, or I couldn't find any more bulky things to pile up there safely in order to make the hill. When it was covered with grass, this is what the hill looked like. You can see the trusty pliers holding up a tree there. This is just gravel or chippings. This is a mixture of real and fake trees or branches of trees. And this is bracken and moss from the mountain. At the time my parents lived near quite a big expanse of mountain and more sort of moorland, which was great for getting branches and bracken from. This is a little bunch of small logs wired together, and they were flexible, so I could bend them into a little semicircle, which made a bridge here. We bought this in a pet shop, I think. I don't know what it was for originally. And this is polystyrene, the banks of the stream, and the stream itself is gauze and pale blue and silver fabric. And this is the house and garden looking down from the top of the hill. The problem, which I later discovered, was getting, and this is the wallpaper. I would have to, in the end, Photoshop this background out. The problem was getting close enough to the hill to get the shot of Joe and Grandpa at the top without stumbling and crushing it and everything falling over. So in the end I had to do the shots at the top of the hill in a completely different place and just pretend they were standing at the top. And there's the horse that appeared in Greta the Great, and the fox that appeared also in Greta the Great. And now we're looking down. This car appeared in the scrapbook field. We're looking towards the kitchen window and Grandma's bedroom window. This house, which I drew up plans for and had built, I designed so that it was open at the back, and where this table met another table, there was a space at the back between the table and wall, so I could crawl under this table and come up here and have completely free access to the back of the house here. I would come up somewhere amongst these trees here. I wanted to try and drape something on the walls to simulate sky, but I couldn't push drawing pins into the wallpaper or sellotape anything to it, and I didn't have a big enough piece of board to slot behind. Here's the stream close up. The polystyrene worked so well, we painted it grey, and the stream looked remarkably realistic even though it was just like gauze and fabric. This is the house seen from the front. As you can see, it's quite a contemporary house. Fake grass, real moss hedges, I think, and again a mixture of real fir tree branches and fake fir trees. Ironically, none of this garden made it into the picture book except this tiny bit, and you couldn't see much of it because it was supposed to be nighttime, so I had very dim lighting. Joe's bedroom window is just here, above this lean-to. You can see a vegetable plot, a run of beans here, and a washing line in the background. Let me just see if I can make this brighter. Ah, that's better. Okay. Is it better? Sugar. Okay, slightly better, I think. And that's an aerial view of the garden. This garden shed. This is, so you can see that this set took up the whole length of a room because there's the window and the end stretched right to the other end of the room, and they were big rooms in my parents' house, so it's a good job. These vegetables also appeared in Little Old Lady Pie in Clara's garden. These patio stones were real ceramic tiles that I made and cut. And I put real pieces of fern and weed growing between the cracks. This is a photograph showing just how many houses and sets and props were crammed into such a small space. So on the left we've got the house from The Night the Moon Went Out. This is the 1930s house that appeared. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's better. I'm so sorry about that. I was looking at the laptop, not the phone. So this is the 1930s house that appears in When the Lights Went Out. This is the modern house from The Night the Moon Went Out. And this is the tree trunk, Little Pixie's house, from the storybook Little Pixie's Rainy Day. And I would sort of shift gingerly between all three of them. And that was just one room. I actually took over about 3 or 4 rooms of my parents' house. They were very, very, very understanding and let me, as long as I promised to clean up absolutely after myself, which I believe I more or less did, although they're still finding polyfiller in the leather settee, in the leather sofa, I think. They let me do what I wanted, more or less. And this is looking through the bedroom door at the hill, and unfortunately you can see how much soil and bracken and debris gets onto the floor. Here's the gap where I would emerge at the back of the house, and I had access to the kitchen, the hall, the sitting room, both bedrooms and landing from there. Actually all 3 bedrooms. And this is the pine end with snow, which was cotton wool, and the garden under snow from Grandma's Piano. Grandma's Piano is this little book, by the way. This is the mock-up book for it, and I don't have any of the models with me in London. I don't have Alice and I don't have the old lady. cotton wool snowman. And then we're back in the night the moon went out, and here's Joe, or Ben, and he's in his pajamas clutching Monkey, which is his toy throughout the story, and gazing out at the moon. This is another experiment with moonlight in the room. It's a bit too bright. And this is a piece of cardboard painted and put in front of a lamp outside. I experimented with different bulbs and a lamp pushed tight up against panes of glass, which often broke, and sheets of paper, sellotape to the side. Took days and days of experimenting to get the right moonlight. This is a close-up from the kitchen from the same story, when Joe and Grandad are eating pancakes. It's also supposed to be by moonlight. And here we are back in the kitchen, in Grandma's piano again. And the handle of the blind was made by cotton thread with 2 tiny wooden beads at the end. The top of 2 toothpicks, in fact, and then a knot tied at the bottom. And I think my mum and I made the blinds, and I made the kitchen units. It took about a week to make this fitted kitchen. Doesn't look that impressive, but it took a hell of a lot of measuring. I couldn't find kitchen units that looked realistic and modern. I really wanted a very, very plain, toned down appearance. Well, in fact, I did find one kitchen that would have sort of worked, but it was really expensive. And it was also a bit too flashy. I wanted a very, very ordinary kitchen. So in the end, I made them. The handles on the doors are pinheads painted the same colour as the wood. This is a lamp, again, giving the effect of sunlight. This is the living room. And through the open door, you can see in the photo above the hall. So through there is the hall, and through here is the hall adjoining the 2 rooms. And this living room doesn't feature at all in The Night the Moon Went Out, but it's a central room in the book Grandma's Piano, because it's where Grandma plays the piano. And Alice and Grandma's relationship is their scenes together largely take place in this room. Again, I wanted a very, very staid, almost boring, conventional to the point of being boring living room, and I'm really, really pleased with the result. Here's Grandma playing different music that Alice and Joe are dancing to. This is Alice waking during her dream and tiptoeing downstairs. This is the hallway of the house as seen from the front door. I made sure I could take various walls of the house away, as in the 30s house. So in this instance, the front part of the house slid away, and I could photograph the whole hall and the bedroom above the hall. And here's the hall again in The Night the Moon Went Out. And again, I was trying to get the effect of moonlight pouring in through the open front door, but I couldn't really photograph through the open front door, as the hall would have been far too dark and light doesn't work the same way. In any case, it didn't really work. We have Grandad lacing up Joe's shoes, ready to go and see the eclipse. And now we come on to the 1930s house and behind the scenes of the story, which is called When the Lights Went Out. This is the little mock-up book I made to send to publishers. I don't have the little girl from this story in London, Lucy, but I do have the old lady who in the story is called Great Aunt Rose, but to me she's called Maria. Sorry about the lighting. And this is the bathroom of the same house. So the same house that was in Grandma's piano and The Night the Moon Went Out. It's a modern bathroom, and I made the bathroom suite. This bathroom is behind the hall. The door leading into it can be seen at the back of the photograph above. And here are the various stages of making the bath. I found a hard plastic container about the right size. I glued strips of Perspex sheeting to the sides with a glue gun. Glue gun was so invaluable lots of times making these models. And then I took apart some plastic packaging for the wash hand basin, and then I covered both wash basin and bath with air drying Fimo, this white stuff. I sort of filled in the corners to make it circular, then coated a light bulb in olive oil to smooth it out. This is the landing. This is Alice's bedroom, which is through that door there. Which she shares with her baby brother. She's not too keen on that. And here I've tried to make the room look like it's lit by moonlight. There's Grandma's bedroom, where she's not very well. Alice is bringing her a glass of water. Another angle of the same scene. And this is the house lit by moonlight. And you can see how difficult it was to get sufficient visibility for the viewer to see anything at all, and simultaneously suggest nighttime. I was trying to get Joe and Grandad, you can see his daylight outside the window here, to look like they were illuminated by the moon without having the effect of a spotlight upon them, which in fact I did have to put on them. It was quite difficult. Here they are coming up to the hill, and in the end I think I took a daylit photograph, and afterwards just edited it in Photoshop to make it look like moonlight. I was experimenting with different angles there and just trying to get really long shadows of the tree and the car and the figures. And here's a lamp again at the top of the hill. I really wanted a shot of the moon from the kitchen window, but I didn't know then that you shouldn't really, or it's very difficult to take a photograph looking directly at the source of light. And the pane of glass showed up in photographs. The pane of glass in front of the lamp. There were a few fires while I was doing this. I think I was quite pleased with this photograph in the end. Photographing The Night the Moon Went Out was the most challenging story, not just because of the trials of the moon lamp, but achieving the necessary distance between Joe and Grandad and the moon. I mentioned before when talking about the mock-up picture book that I didn't have enough physical space to make the landscape. Excuse me. I didn't have enough physical space to make the landscape that the eclipse moves across, or the shadow of the eclipse moves across. so in the end I superimposed a photograph of them on a shot of the countryside that I'd photoshopped to look moonlit.